I didn't realize it was me at first. The course was called Body Language for Modern Presenters. I saw the ad completely by accident. A banner popped up between YouTube videos while I was watching editing tutorials. The thumbnail? Familiar. A woman mid-gesture, confident stance, soft lighting. Edited, filtered, the background blurred, but it was me. My body. My pose. My keynote. And below it, Instructor, Dr. Samuel Wexler. I froze. He had been my professor during my final year at university. Charismatic. Sharp. Smug. We hadn't parted on good terms. I accused him of curating student work and reusing it in his own publications. He'd replied, "A good teacher inspires. If your ideas inspire, they're alive." And now my face, my image in his online course. No permission. No credit. No history. I took a screenshot. Then another. And another. I didn't scream. I didn't post about it on Instagram. I didn't file a complaint. I just smiled. Because he forgot one thing. I learned from him too, but I play better. My name is Olivia Martin. I'm 29. I work as a communications strategist at a media agency in Chicago. My degree is in rhetoric and digital culture. My calling? Controlling narratives. I believe in the power of words and even more in the silence before the strike. I'll never forget how he spoke on stage. Gestures are the text that precedes speech. Back then, he'd use examples from stage acting, TED Talks, and from my final thesis project. No attribution. No acknowledgement. Just his. I didn't realize how deeply it cut until I saw the course. I stared at that banner for an hour after I took the screenshots. His smile. My stance. His name. My language. He was using parts of my work. Slides. Even an exact sentence, word for word, from my final report, where I wrote about neck and shoulder positioning as subconscious confidence signals. This wasn't coincidence. It was plagiarism dressed up as inspiration. I typed 3 lines into a draft complaint form, then deleted them. Instead, I opened a new Google Doc and titled it, Reverse Lecture Plan. Inside, I outlined how he structured his lessons, what imagery he reused, where my phrasing resurfaced, how the audience responded. I wasn't going to act like a bitter student. I was going to respond like a strategist who knew how to dismantle a speaker in his own arena. The course cost $89. I paid it without hesitation, using a burner email and a name that wasn't mine. Claire D. Sounded neutral enough. Once inside, I was hit with a wave of nauseating familiarity. The opening slide, the tone, the cadence of his intro, it was all textbook Wexler. Except this time, the textbook felt like it had my fingerprints all over it. He began with a story. Years ago, he said, smiling into the camera, a student gave a presentation where she unknowingly demonstrated a key mistake in posture. I already knew where this was going. He'd used this anecdote before years ago. And now he was retelling it verbatim, except the student was me. My story. My moment of stumbling, which he had watched and praised at the time, now stripped of context and turned into a public fable. He laughed in the video. Her shoulders curved inward. Hands clutched. She didn't even realize how small she looked. My stomach turned. But I didn't pause the video. I didn't take a break. I leaned in. This wasn't just about the photo anymore. He had built lessons, entire metaphors on my work, my story, my vulnerability. He'd taken a private academic moment and twisted it into a case study. And it was about to become his mistake. I began cataloging everything. I screen-recorded, time-stamped, took notes like a court reporter. I compared each slide to my archived thesis presentation. Found 3 reuse phrases, 2 image parallels, and a direct lift from my appendix. I wasn't planning a lawsuit. I was building a strategy. Because in 2025, copyright wasn't the only court that mattered. Perception. Platform. Narrative. If he used me to strengthen his persona, what would happen if I used him to reveal the truth? I drafted a plan. Phase 1, documentation. Phase 2, subtle exposure. Phase 3, controlled confrontation. Lauren, my best friend and ex-colleague, was the only one who knew. "This is insane," she said over FaceTime. "You sure you want to go there?" "He made me the story," I said. "I'm just rewriting the ending." But I knew the risk. One leak. One wrong move. And he'd either shut it down or spin it. I wasn't ready for the world to know. Not yet. Phase 2 began with a question. Beneath lesson 3 of the course, I left a single comment. Anonymous, polite, seemingly curious. This section sounds a lot like something I read in a student thesis from 2018. Was this inspired by a specific case study? It stayed up for 3 hours. Then it disappeared. I left another one, more carefully worded. The concept around shoulder compression and vocal resonance feels familiar. Is this based on published research? That one stayed. And a day later it got replies. Some supportive, some skeptical, but most intriguing, one from another student. I thought the same. Heard a similar example at a university seminar years ago. Weird. Exactly the crack I needed. The internet didn't need fire. It needed friction. While the course discussion bubbled, I reached out to 3 communication scholars I'd met during grad school. Sent them short clips. No names. Just content. All 3 responded the same way. This is very close to someone else's work. The phrasing is nearly identical to a thesis I reviewed years ago. This borders on misappropriation. One of them, Dr. Bellamy, added, "If this came from a faculty member, it's deeply unethical." That sentence stayed with me. Meanwhile, things were changing inside the course. By Thursday, 2 videos were gone, marked as updated for clarity. Lesson 5 was shortened. Lesson 7 got a new thumbnail. He knew. He didn't know who or how, but he knew something was coming. Lauren called me in a panic. "Liv, he's covering tracks. That means you scared him." "I didn't want panic," I replied. "I wanted truth. But you can't wait too long. If he takes the whole thing down." "I know." So I moved faster. I archived everything, videos, comments, metadata. And I began drafting the post. Not a thread. Not a rant. A story. Because if he had stolen my narrative to build his brand, then I would take mine back in the loudest, cleanest, most public way possible. I didn't tag him. I didn't mention the course name. I didn't call for outrage. I didn't even use the word plagiarism. I just told the story. It went live on LinkedIn at 9:41 a.m. on a Monday. My usual posting hour, consistent with my professional rhythm. The photo was a split image. One half from my 2018 presentation, the other a still from the course. The resemblance spoke for itself. In the caption I wrote, "Sometimes your work becomes part of someone else's voice. Sometimes it's borrowed. Sometimes it's taken." I used to think that silence was the safest response. But lately, I believe in showing the difference between inspiration and appropriation. Visually, structurally, and respectfully. No hashtags. No emojis. Just clarity. The reaction was swift. By noon, the post had over 600 likes. By evening, it crossed 40,000 views. People I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. Professors. Editors. Former students of his. I recognized this slide. He used this in a lecture last fall. I always wondered where that case study came from. It wasn't a mob. It was momentum. On Tuesday, I checked the course page. Gone. Unavailable due to internal updates. Lauren called me breathless. "Liv, you did it." But I wasn't sure. Because Wexler still hadn't responded. No email. No comment. No post. And that worried me more than anger would have. Because silence from a man like that? It wasn't retreat. It was calculation. And if I knew anything about Samuel Wexler, he wasn't done. Took him 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days where my post kept circulating, reshared by media professionals, speaking coaches, even 2 mid-sized news outlets who wrote quick blog-style summaries like, "Ex-student suggests prominent educator crossed a line." Then, on Thursday morning he surfaced. Not on LinkedIn. Not via direct email. But in a glossy column for Speaking Culture Quarterly. A niche but respected outlet. The title? Authorship, Ownership, and the Fragile Ego of the Digital Age. I knew instantly. It wasn't a direct attack. It was worse. It was academic, elegant, deliberately abstract. A defense disguised as philosophy. A preemptive reframing. The kind only people like him knew how to write. In the piece he never used my name. Never mentioned the course. But he wrote lines like, "The hunger to own an idea often stems from insecurity, not creation. Public shame has replaced peer review in the court of online reputation. The desire to be credited often outweighs the value of the contribution itself." I read it twice. The second time, I highlighted the paragraph that hit like a dagger. When students conflate influence with infringement, they turn the classroom into a courtroom and the mentor into a suspect. I sent the quote to Lauren. She replied, "He's trying to reverse it. He's making you look like a petty opportunist." I nodded even though she couldn't see me, because I knew this wasn't defense. It was chess. He was trying to reframe the entire narrative from theft to theory, from unethical to misunderstood, from my story to his structure. But I wasn't a student anymore, and I wasn't afraid of footnotes. I began drafting. Not a response, an escalation. This wouldn't be a blog post. It would be a case study. Documented, linked, dated, cross-referenced. And this time I would use names. The document was 12 pages long. 12 pages of citations, screen grabs, timestamps, and side-by-side comparisons. My original slides. His edited versions. Audio transcripts. Phrase tracking. Structural alignment. I didn't include rage. I didn't even include adjectives. Just facts. Called it attribution and ambiguity. A case in pedagogical parallels. And I published it on Medium, then mirrored it to Substack and academia.edu. It wasn't a gotcha. It was a record. The link spread fast. This time, not just among comms nerds and ex-students, but professors, trainers, intellectual property blogs. 2 prominent lecturers in New York and San Diego reposted it, each writing, "This is why authorship matters. We must hold educators accountable, not just inspire them." The post climbed to 48,000 views in under 48 hours. Then a headline appeared in EdNet Watch. Wexler course sparks attribution debate. Is academic performance still protected? I didn't respond to interview requests. Not yet, because this wasn't about PR. It was about precedent. And then, an email. No subject. From a Proton mail address I didn't recognize. Message. You want the real story? I have it. I stared at the screen. Just that line. Nothing else. I hesitated, then typed back. Who are you? No answer for hours. Then finally, let's just say I sat in the same chair once. And I took better notes than he expected. My pulse spiked. Was this someone from the past? A student? A colleague? A ghost? The timing wasn't a coincidence. And if what they had was real, this wasn't just about one man stealing content. It was about a pattern. And I was closer than ever to exposing it. Her name was Lena, a former grad student. Rhetoric PhD. Soft voice, sharp mind. We talked for 42 minutes over a scrambled line. She didn't want her voice recorded, so I typed as fast as I could. She didn't sound angry. She sounded exhausted. I used to think he saw me, she said. My questions, my frameworks. He'd compliment them in seminar. Then 3 months later, I'd hear my words on a panel. She sent me PDFs, old outlines, notes, abandoned proposals. I opened one labeled Structure over Spark. Rehearsed authenticity in public speaking. Half the content read like it had been copy-pasted into Wexler's current curriculum. One phrase jumped out at me. When speech becomes stylized enough, it stops revealing and starts performing. That same line appeared, almost verbatim, in his recent conference talk. I asked her why she was sharing it now. I watched what you did, she said simply. And I thought, finally someone didn't flinch. Her voice shook slightly. I wish I'd said something when it happened. I thought I'd lose everything. I told her. You didn't lose anything. He did. He lost the version of himself that could have taught with integrity. She was quiet for a long time. Then, you can use it. Just don't use my name. Not yet. I agreed. When we hung up, I sat in stillness. No music. No phone. Just pages and pages of another stolen voice. And for the first time, I didn't feel uncertain. I felt clear. He didn't just take from me. He took from all of us. The second piece was different. I didn't write it as an expose. I wrote it as a mirror. Titled, A Voice in the Margin, it wove my story with Lena's without names or dates. Just tone, pattern, silence. I published it on Friday. By Saturday morning, it had over 100,000 reads. The comments were unlike anything I'd seen. One user wrote, I know exactly who you're talking about. And I stayed silent too. Another shared. He used my story in 2016. Word for word. I thought it was flattery. Now I'm not sure. It wasn't just about Wexler anymore. It was about the system that let Wexlers thrive. Platforms began responding subtly. His author page on 2 publishing sites? Gone. A keynote listing for an upcoming event? Speaker change announced. A co-authored article? Now listed under editorial review. He hadn't spoken publicly since his essay, but now silence wasn't protection. It was absence. Lauren sent me a photo of a whiteboard from her university. At the top, discussion prompt. How do we define original thought? Beneath it, my quote. When speech becomes stylized enough, it stops revealing and starts performing. She added, your words are being taught now. I stared at the photo, heart caught between pride and grief. Then later that night I opened my email. Subject line. Keynote invitation voices reclaimed conference DC. Topic. When the voice was never yours. I didn't reply right away. I just let the weight of that title settle in. Because maybe for the first time, it was. The ballroom was colder than I expected. 400 seats. Stage lights. A podium I didn't touch. I stood beside it, palms flat against my notes, though I barely looked at them. My name is Olivia Martin, I began, and I want to talk about memory, about authorship, about the echo we leave behind when someone else takes the mic. Silence. But not the nervous kind, the listening kind. I told them the story, not as a warning, not as revenge, but as a pattern. A shape that kept repeating in classrooms, conferences, careers. I spoke about Lena. I referenced the course. I even quoted the comment. Some of us remember who stayed silent. I ended with this. I was once told that if your words are powerful, they will travel, sometimes without you. But I've learned. There's a difference between influence and theft, between legacy and extraction. And if we don't defend the line, we lose not just credit, but courage. When I stepped away, there was a beat of stillness. Then applause. Long, steady. Uncomfortable even because everyone knew what it meant. Afterwards, I stood near the exit. People passed, some stopping to say thank you. Others just nodded. Then a man in a gray coat handed me a folded note. He didn't say his name. He just smiled and kept walking. I waited until I got back to my room to open it. Inside, handwritten. He didn't start with you. But you're the one who stopped him. I closed my eyes. Exhaled. Later that night, I opened my old thesis. Slide 1. That first photo of me, arms open, unguarded. I smiled. Because for the first time in years, it belonged to me again.